Angels. We picture gentle guides with wings, but the Bible describes something far stranger, terrifying, luminous beings who arrive in chariots of fire and wheels within wheels. They give technology, take human wives, and trigger global catastrophes. These aren't peaceful stories. So what were they? The answer may rewrite human history and challenge the very foundation of faith. For as long as human beings have looked up at the night sky, we have asked the same question in different forms: are we alone? In every era, across every civilization, people have described encounters with beings not quite human, radiant figures descending from above, messengers of immense power, entities who arrive with knowledge, warnings, and authority. In the language of religion, they are angels. In the language of myth, they are divine intermediaries. But in the language of modern speculation, a provocative possibility emerges. What if these angels were not supernatural at all? What if instead they were visitors, beings from elsewhere, interpreted through the limited understanding of ancient societies? This idea sits at the crossroads of faith, history, and the enduring mystery of unexplained phenomena. It is not a claim of certainty, but a lens, one that invites us to revisit ancient texts and traditions with fresh eyes, asking whether some descriptions might align less with spiritual metaphor and more with something physical, technological, even extraterrestrial. To explore this question, we must begin with the world in which angel stories were born. Ancient people did not possess the scientific framework we have today. They had no concept of spacecraft, advanced propulsion, or interstellar travel. Their universe was filled with gods, spirits, and cosmic forces. When something extraordinary occurred, something beyond ordinary experience, it was filtered through religious and symbolic language. A glowing figure descending from the heavens would not be called an alien. It would be called an angel. A voice speaking from the sky would not be attributed to radio transmission. It would be attributed to divine speech. This does not mean the events were extraterrestrial, but it raises the possibility that extraordinary encounters, if they happened, would inevitably be described in spiritual terms. The word angel itself comes from the Greek angelos, meaning messenger. Angels, in the biblical tradition, are not independent deities, but emissaries, agents who deliver instructions, warnings, or revelations. They appear suddenly, often accompanied by fear, light, or overwhelming presence. They possess knowledge beyond human understanding. They sometimes interact physically with the world, and in several accounts, they are described not as ethereal spirits, but as beings with bodies, eating, touching, walking, even wrestling. This physicality has led some researchers to wonder whether angels were imagined purely as spiritual entities, or whether they were based on experiences that felt tangible and real. Consider one of the earliest and most striking patterns in angel narratives: the descent from above. Angels come down from heaven. They arrive from the sky. They appear in flashes of light. In modern UFO reports, witnesses often describe luminous objects descending, hovering, emitting beams, or producing intense radiance. Again, the comparison does not prove anything, but it highlights a recurring human association between the sky and the unknown. For ancient people, heaven was literally above, the dwelling place of the divine. For modern people, the sky is where aircraft and spacecraft travel, the same direction, the same mystery, interpreted through different cultural frameworks. One of the most famous angel encounters in the Hebrew Bible occurs in the story of Abraham. In Genesis, Abraham is visited by three mysterious figures. The text calls them men, yet the narrative quickly shifts into the language of divine visitation. Abraham offers them food. They eat, they speak with authority, they reveal knowledge of the future, and they announce events beyond human control. Two of these figures later go to Sodom, where they are explicitly described as angels. The scene is strangely grounded. These are not wispy spirits, but embodied visitors who sit, eat, travel, and interact like physical beings. For those who entertain the ancient astronaut hypothesis, such passages raise the question: could these accounts preserve distorted memories of encounters with non-human visitors? The story becomes even more unsettling when we examine the reactions of those who witness angels. Again and again, people respond with terror. Angels frequently begin with the phrase, "Do not be afraid." Why would a divine messenger need to reassure humans so consistently? Some theologians argue it is because the presence of holiness is overwhelming, but speculative thinkers propose another angle. Perhaps these encounters were frightening because they were strange, unfamiliar, and physically imposing, like meeting an advanced being beyond comprehension. In modern abduction narratives, witnesses often describe paralysis, fear, and awe in the presence of entities that appear humanoid but not quite human. The psychological parallels are striking, though far from conclusive. Moving beyond Genesis, the Bible contains other accounts that sound, to some readers, surprisingly technological. One of the most discussed is the vision of the prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel describes seeing a stormy cloud approaching, filled with fire and brightness. Within it are strange living creatures, wheels within wheels, and a radiant platform above them. The imagery is complex and symbolic, but it has captivated UFO researchers for decades. Some interpret Ezekiel's vision as a metaphorical description of divine glory. Others, like author Erich von Däniken, have famously suggested it could resemble a spacecraft described by an ancient observer with no technical vocabulary. The wheels that move in multiple directions, the roaring sound, the brightness, the otherworldly beings, these elements have fueled speculation that Ezekiel may have witnessed something extraordinary, filtered through prophetic language. Ezekiel's vision introduces another theme: angels as part of a larger system. In many traditions, angels are not isolated figures, but members of hierarchies, armies, and cosmic orders. They operate within structured ranks. They serve a higher authority. In speculative terms, one might imagine a scenario where these messengers are part of an advanced civilization's exploratory or observational program, assigned roles and missions. This idea resembles modern concepts of contact scenarios: reconnaissance, communication, intervention. Of course, this is imaginative extrapolation, not historical proof, but it demonstrates how angel narratives can be reinterpreted through a science fiction lens. The New Testament continues the pattern. Angels announce births, deliver warnings, appear in dreams, and guide individuals toward destiny. In the Gospel of Luke, an angel appears to shepherds at night, and the glory of the Lord shone around them. The shepherds are terrified. Then suddenly, the sky is filled with a multitude of heavenly beings praising God. This scene has often been depicted as a spiritual chorus, but one could ask, what would a group of luminous aerial phenomena look like to ancient shepherds? Would they interpret it as angels? Would they describe it as heavenly hosts? The line between spiritual vision and anomalous aerial encounter becomes blurred when viewed through the speculative lens. One of the most intriguing aspects of angel accounts is their consistent association with light. Angels shine. They appear radiant. Their presence illuminates darkness. Light, in religious symbolism, represents purity and divinity. But light is also a hallmark of advanced technology. Modern aircraft, drones, and spacecraft produce intense illumination. UFO reports frequently emphasize brightness, glowing forms, beams, and dazzling effects. If an ancient person saw an object or being emitting unfamiliar light, the natural conclusion would be supernatural radiance. Thus, the symbolic language of glory could, in speculative interpretation, overlap with descriptions of technological luminescence. But angels are not the only beings in ancient texts that invite reinterpretation. The Bible also speaks of the Nephilim, mysterious figures described as giants or mighty men of old. Genesis mentions sons of God who came to the daughters of humans, producing offspring. This cryptic passage has sparked endless debate. Traditional theology interprets it in various ways: fallen angels, human rulers, mythic exaggeration. Ancient astronaut theorists, however, propose that it could describe genetic experimentation or hybridization between humans and non-human entities. Such interpretations are controversial and speculative, but they reveal how ancient texts can become a canvas for modern extraterrestrial imagination. Outside the Bible, angel-like beings appear across cultures. In Mesopotamian mythology, the Apkallu were wise beings who came from the sea or heavens to teach humanity. In ancient India, the Devas descended in flying vehicles called vimanas. In Greek mythology, gods frequently interacted with humans, producing heroes and imparting knowledge. In Mesoamerican traditions, Quetzalcoatl is described as a radiant figure associated with the sky, bringing civilization. Across the world, stories repeat. Visitors arrive from above, teach, warn, intervene, then depart. Are these universal myths reflecting human psychology and archetypes? Or could they preserve fragmented memories of encounters with something real but misunderstood? The ancient astronaut hypothesis argues that humanity's earliest religions may have been shaped by contact with advanced extraterrestrial beings. According to this view, angels, gods, and divine messengers were interpreted through the only framework ancient people had: spirituality. Technology became magic, spacecraft became chariots of fire, aliens became angels. Critics respond that this approach strips ancient cultures of their symbolic richness and imposes modern fantasies onto sacred texts. Yet supporters counter that the consistency of these narratives across civilizations is difficult to ignore. The careful approach lies in recognizing both possibilities. Human beings are storytelling creatures. We mythologize the unknown. We personify cosmic forces. We create angels because we seek meaning, comfort, and explanation. But it is also true that the universe is vast, and the possibility of life beyond Earth is scientifically plausible. If contact ever occurred in antiquity, it would almost certainly be recorded in mythic language. Thus, the question remains open, not as a matter of belief, but as an invitation to explore. In this video, we will examine the angel phenomenon through this speculative but cautious lens. We will travel through ancient scriptures, apocryphal texts, and global mythologies. We will compare descriptions of angels with modern reports of unidentified aerial phenomena. We will explore whether angels could represent misunderstood extraterrestrial visitors, or whether such interpretations reveal more about modern imagination than ancient reality. And we will confront the deeper implications. If angels were aliens, what would that mean for religion, for history, and for humanity's place in the cosmos? The stories of angels have shaped civilizations. They have inspired art, faith, fear, and hope. They are among the most enduring symbols of the connection between Earth and the heavens. But perhaps, hidden within these luminous narratives, there is another possibility, one that challenges our assumptions and forces us to ask whether the messengers from above were truly divine or something else entirely. To understand why the idea of angels as extraterrestrial visitors has gained such fascination, we must travel far beyond the familiar pages of the Bible, back into the cradle of civilization itself. Long before the rise of Christianity, or even the formation of ancient Israel, the people of Mesopotamia, the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians were already telling stories of beings who came from the heavens, shaped human destiny, and transmitted knowledge that seemed beyond ordinary human reach. In the ruins of their cities, carved into stone reliefs and preserved in clay tablets, we find some of the earliest depictions of winged entities, figures that many modern eyes instinctively associate with angels. But these civilizations did not call them angels. They called them gods, watchers, apkallu, or divine messengers. And the question arises, were these simply symbolic representations of spiritual forces? Or could they reflect ancient encounters with something perceived as otherworldly, even physical? Mesopotamia was a world of stars and omens. The night sky was not merely a backdrop, but a living map of divine intention. The planets were gods, the constellations were messages, the heavens were believed to govern the earth in direct and intimate ways. Mesopotamian priests were among the first astronomers, charting celestial movements with astonishing precision. They believed that what happened above was inseparable from what happened below. In such a worldview, it is easy to see why any unusual phenomenon in the sky, bright lights, strange objects, unexplained events, would immediately take on cosmic significance. The sky was the domain of the powerful, the unknown, the divine. One of the most intriguing groups of beings in Mesopotamian tradition are the apkallu. These were described as sages, semi-divine entities who existed before the Great Flood. According to ancient texts, they were sent by the god Enki to teach humanity the arts of civilization, writing, agriculture, architecture, law, and ritual knowledge. In other words, they were bringers of culture. This is a theme that appears again and again across global mythology. Visitors arrive from beyond, and suddenly humanity receives a leap forward in knowledge. Ancient astronaut theorists seize on this pattern, suggesting that such stories may preserve memories of external intervention, advanced beings accelerating human development. Skeptics argue these are mythic explanations for gradual cultural progress. Yet the symbolism remains provocative. Why do so many cultures describe knowledge as something delivered from above rather than discovered from within? The Apkallu are often depicted as strange hybrid beings, part human, part fish, sometimes winged. To modernize, these images can look almost like symbolic spacesuits or non-human forms. But in Mesopotamian religion, hybridity represented liminality, beings that belonged to both worlds, divine and earthly. Still, the imagery fuels speculation. Were these sages imagined because people experienced something they could not categorize? Or were they purely mythic archetypes? The line is difficult to draw when dealing with civilizations separated from us by thousands of years. Another powerful image from Mesopotamia is the winged guardian figure, often seen in Assyrian reliefs. These beings, sometimes human-headed with wings, sometimes eagle-headed, stand beside sacred trees or royal thrones, holding objects that resemble pine cones or ritual vessels. Traditional scholarship interprets them as protective spirits or symbolic attendants of the gods. Yet modern speculative thinkers ask, why wings? Why the repeated association with the heavens? Could wings represent flight, not metaphorically, but literally? Or are they simply artistic shorthand for divinity and transcendence? Wings, after all, have always symbolized the ability to cross between realms, earth and sky, human and divine. The ancient world did not separate religion from politics. Kings claimed authority through divine contact. They ruled not merely as administrators, but as chosen intermediaries between humanity and the gods. This is where the concept of messengers becomes especially important. In Mesopotamian texts, gods frequently send emissaries to deliver commands. These emissaries sometimes appear in dreams, sometimes physically. They bring instructions, warnings, or cosmic decrees. In this sense, the angel concept, messengers from above, is far older than the Bible. The Hebrew angelos is simply one cultural expression of a much older human idea, that the heavens communicate with earth through intermediaries. But perhaps the most startling Mesopotamian narrative, one that resonates deeply with the later biblical tradition, is the flood story. The Epic of Gilgamesh contains an account of a great deluge sent by the gods, with one righteous man warned to build a vessel to preserve life. The parallels with Noah are unmistakable. Ancient astronaut theorists argue that shared flood myths across cultures could point to a real catastrophic event in antiquity. But beyond the flood itself, the detail that matters here is the warning. A divine messenger provides advanced knowledge, forewarning of disaster, instructions for survival. In speculative terms, could such messengers represent beings with greater awareness of impending natural catastrophes? Or is this simply mythic storytelling? The question remains open, but the pattern persists. Humanity receives guidance from beyond. The Mesopotamian gods themselves are often described in ways that sound strangely physical. They travel, they eat, they engage in conflict, they possess hierarchies and councils. In the Enuma Elish, the gods meet in assembly to decide cosmic outcomes. In Genesis, we find a similar echo. Let us make man in our image. Who is the us? Traditional theology interprets it as divine majesty or the heavenly court. Ancient astronaut theorists interpret it literally, a plural group of advanced beings. Again, this is speculative, but it demonstrates how ancient texts can be read through radically different frameworks. Moving forward in time, we encounter one of the most enigmatic Mesopotamian concepts, the Watchers. While the Watchers become more prominent in later Jewish apocryphal texts, the idea of heavenly beings observing humanity has deep roots in Near Eastern thought. The heavens were not distant, they were inhabited. The stars were eyes, the gods watched. The sense that humanity was under surveillance, under cosmic observation, is a theme that resonates uncannily with modern ideas of extraterrestrial monitoring. Many UFO theorists propose that Earth could be under long-term observation by non-human intelligences. Ancient cultures expressed a similar intuition, though in spiritual terms. If we step outside Mesopotamia for a moment, we find that Egypt also offers striking parallels. Egyptian religion was filled with sky gods, solar boats, beings who descended to interact with pharaohs. The pharaoh himself was considered divine, often depicted ascending to the heavens after death. In pyramid texts, the king flies up to join the gods among the stars. The heavens were not abstract, they were a destination. The Egyptian emphasis on star travel, celestial ascension, and divine beings moving between realms has led some speculative thinkers to wonder whether ancient people were inspired by observations of phenomena they could not explain. But Mesopotamia remains the foundation because it is one of the first places where written records preserve these ideas. Here, in the earliest libraries of humanity, we see the template: beings from above, messengers of cosmic authority, guardians with wings, sages who teach civilization, divine warnings of catastrophe. These are the building blocks that later traditions, including the Bible, inherit and transform. So when we ask whether angels could have been aliens, we are not starting with Christianity. We are starting with a much older human pattern: the belief that the sky is inhabited, that knowledge comes from above, that humanity is not alone in the cosmic hierarchy. The angel, in this sense, is not an isolated invention. It is part of a continuum stretching back to the first civilizations who gazed at the stars and imagined or experienced something beyond. Of course, the mainstream academic view remains clear. These beings are mythological constructs, symbolic representations of divine order, reflections of human psychology and social structure. Wings represent transcendence, not technology. Sages represent cultural memory, not extraterrestrial tutoring. And yet, the persistence of these motifs invites speculation. Why do humans everywhere tell stories of sky visitors? Why do so many traditions describe messengers descending with knowledge, authority, and fearsome presence? If Mesopotamia gives us the earliest template of heavenly messengers and strange divine visitors, then the next step in this investigation takes us into one of the most controversial and mysterious bodies of ancient writing ever produced: the apocryphal texts. These are works that existed alongside biblical scripture, circulated widely in the ancient world, and were considered authoritative by many communities, but were ultimately excluded from the official canon of Judaism and most branches of Christianity. Among them, none has captured the imagination of speculative researchers more than the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is not a minor footnote in religious history. It is an extraordinary text, filled with visions of celestial realms, descriptions of angelic beings, cosmic journeys, and a shocking narrative of fallen angels who descend to Earth, interact with humans, and transmit forbidden knowledge. For ancient astronaut theorists, Enoch reads less like abstract theology and more like a record of contact, an account of beings from above who intervene directly in human affairs. For mainstream scholars, it is a powerful example of Jewish apocalyptic literature, rich in symbolism and mythic imagination. But regardless of interpretation, the Book of Enoch forces us to confront a version of angel history that is far stranger and more physical than the sanitized imagery of angels in modern art. Enoch himself is a mysterious figure. In Genesis, he appears only briefly, a man who walked with God and was taken up, not experiencing death. This short passage sparked centuries of speculation. Who was Enoch? Where was he taken? The Book of Enoch expands this into an epic narrative. Enoch is lifted into the heavens, shown the structure of the cosmos, introduced to angelic hierarchies, and given revelations about the fate of humanity. In modern terms, it resembles what some might call an abduction or contact story, an individual transported beyond Earth, shown incomprehensible realities, then returned with a message. One of the most dramatic sections of Enoch concerns the Watchers. These are angels assigned to observe humanity, but according to the text, a group of them rebels. They descend to earth, take human women as wives, and produce hybrid offspring called the Nephilim, giant beings of immense strength. This narrative is deeply unsettling. Even within a religious framework, angels are not supposed to reproduce. The boundary between divine and human is violated. The result is chaos, violence, and corruption, leading eventually to the flood. Traditional theology interprets this story as mythic explanation for evil and disorder. But ancient astronaut theorists see something else, a description of beings from above engaging in genetic or biological interaction with humans. The idea of hybridization is a recurring motif in modern UFO lore, stories of experiments, crossbreeding, and altered human genetics. The parallels are impossible to ignore, though they remain speculative. Could the Watchers represent extraterrestrial visitors misunderstood as angels? Or does the similarity simply reflect the human imagination grappling with fears of the unknown? The Watchers, according to Enoch, bring knowledge, but not ordinary knowledge. They teach metallurgy, weapon making, cosmetics, astrology, and secret arts. This is portrayed as forbidden technology, tools that humanity was not ready to possess. Here we encounter a theme that resonates strongly with speculative interpretations. The idea that advanced beings introduced disruptive knowledge into early human societies. In mythic terms, this is the Prometheus story. The gods do not want humans to have fire, but it is stolen and given anyway. In Enoch, the Watchers are punished precisely because they gave humans knowledge that altered the balance of power. Ancient astronaut theorists interpret this as a memory of technological transfer, advanced visitors providing skills that accelerated human development, but with dangerous consequences. The punishment of the Watchers is equally striking. They are bound, imprisoned beneath the earth, awaiting judgment. Their offspring, the giants, are destroyed. The narrative reads almost like an ancient attempt to explain why a mysterious group of powerful beings once interacted with humanity, but then vanished. If angels were extraterrestrials, the story could be interpreted as a failed intervention, a rogue faction, or an early experiment abandoned. Again, this is imaginative speculation, but the text provides fertile ground for such reinterpretations. Enoch also contains elaborate descriptions of celestial architecture. He speaks of heavenly chambers, luminous structures, fiery beings, and cosmic mechanisms governing the stars. He describes angels who regulate celestial bodies, almost like technicians maintaining a vast system. In one passage, Enoch is shown storehouses of wind, lightning, and cosmic forces. To ancient readers, this is symbolic language for divine control of nature. But modern readers sometimes see echoes of technological infrastructure, control centers, energy systems, mechanisms beyond human comprehension. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Enoch is its sense of scale. The cosmos is vast, structured, inhabited by ranks of beings performing specific functions. Heaven is not merely a spiritual abstraction, it is an organized realm, almost bureaucratic in its hierarchy. Angels have roles, duties, assignments. This resembles, in speculative terms, the structure of an advanced civilization more than a mystical cloudscape. The Book of Enoch was highly influential in early Judaism and Christianity. Fragments were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, showing it was widely read. The New Testament even references it indirectly. Yet it was excluded from most biblical canons, preserved fully only in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. Why was such a powerful text left out? Scholars point to its controversial angelology, its elaborate cosmology, and its potential theological complications. But for speculative thinkers, its exclusion fuels suspicion. Was Enoch too revealing? Did it preserve traditions that later authorities wanted suppressed? This is where the ancient alien hypothesis often becomes intertwined with conspiracy, but a grounded approach requires caution. Texts are excluded from canon for many reasons: doctrinal consistency, authorship disputes, historical context. There is no evidence of deliberate cover-up of extraterrestrial contact. Yet, the very existence of Enoch demonstrates that ancient people imagined angels in far more complex and physical ways than modern religious traditions often acknowledge. If angels were purely spiritual, Why do these texts describe them eating, mating, teaching technology, descending physically, and being imprisoned? These are not the soft cherubs of Renaissance paintings. These are powerful beings who interact with the material world. Even if purely mythic, the stories reflect a worldview in which heavenly beings were tangible and real. The Watchers narrative also raises a deeper question. Why do so many cultures describe a golden age, when gods or visitors walked among humans, followed by a separation, a withdrawal? In Greek myth, the gods retreat to Olympus. In Mesopotamia, divine kingship fades. In biblical tradition, angels become less visible. In UFO speculation, contact becomes hidden, covert. The pattern is archetypal. Humanity once had direct contact with the beyond, but that contact was lost. In Enoch, the loss is framed as punishment. Humanity was not ready. Forbidden knowledge brought destruction. The heavens closed their gates. This is a profound mythic theme, the tension between knowledge and innocence, between advancement and catastrophe. If interpreted through an extraterrestrial lens, it becomes a story of intervention gone wrong. The Book of Enoch does not prove angels were aliens, but it expands the angel phenomenon into territory that feels startlingly modern, beings descending from above, imparting knowledge, hybrid offspring, cosmic journeys, structured celestial realms. Whether myth, metaphor, or distorted memory, it forces us to confront the possibility that ancient angel traditions may contain layers far stranger than conventional theology suggests. When most people imagine angels, they picture gentle figures with wings, soft light, and comforting presence. But the angels of ancient scripture are often something else entirely: overwhelming, strange, even terrifying. They appear suddenly, they radiate power, they arrive from the sky with sounds like thunder, and in some of the Bible's most dramatic passages, the boundary between divine vision and something almost technological becomes unsettlingly thin. If the Book of Enoch opened the door to angels as physical beings with forbidden knowledge, the canonical Bible contains its own passages that have fueled speculation for decades. Among them, none is more famous or more debated than the vision of the prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel lived during one of the darkest periods of Israelite history, the Babylonian exile. Jerusalem had fallen, the temple was destroyed, and the people were displaced. In this moment of crisis, Ezekiel reports a vision so strange that it has echoed through history as one of the most vivid encounters with the heavenly realm ever recorded. He writes that he saw a storm cloud approaching from the north, filled with fire flashing continually, surrounded by brilliant light. Within this cloud were living creatures with strange forms, human-like, yet not human, each with multiple faces and wings. Beside them were wheels, intersecting wheels, covered with eyes. The wheels moved in any direction without turning, accompanied by an immense roaring sound, like the voice of the Almighty. Above them was a platform, gleaming like crystal, and above that, a throne-like structure with a radiant figure. For theologians, Ezekiel's vision is symbolic, an apocalyptic representation of divine glory and cosmic order. But for ancient astronaut theorists, it is something else, an ancient observer describing an encounter with advanced machinery using the only language he had. The wheel within a wheel has been interpreted as a possible description of multi-directional propulsion. The fire and brightness resemble exhaust or energy. The roaring sound resembles engines. The living creatures could be beings associated with the craft, perhaps pilots or attendants, and Ezekiel's insistence that the wheels moved without turning suggests motion beyond ordinary mechanics. This interpretation is speculative, but it highlights an important point. Ezekiel is not writing poetry. He repeatedly insists he is describing what he saw. He struggles for comparisons, like burning coals, like flashing lightning, like the sound of many waters. It reads like a witness grasping for metaphors to describe something beyond experience. If an ancient person saw a helicopter, how would they describe it? A spinning creature? A chariot? A storm? Ezekiel's vision becomes a kind of Rorschach test. Believers see divine majesty, skeptics see mythology, ancient astronaut theorists see technology. Ezekiel is not alone. The Bible contains other passages where heavenly beings arrive in ways that sound strangely mechanical. Consider the chariots of fire. In the story of Elijah, the prophet is taken up into heaven in a whirlwind, accompanied by chariots and horses of fire. The text does not describe a spiritual ascent in vague terms. It describes an event. Something fiery appears, separates Elijah from his companion, and Elijah is carried upward. Traditional interpretation sees this as miraculous imagery, but speculative interpretation asks, could this be an ancient description of a luminous craft ascending into the sky? The language of fire could reflect brightness or propulsion. The whirlwind could reflect turbulence or noise. Again, not proof, but an intriguing overlap between ancient symbolism and modern aerospace imagery. The theme continues with the pillar of cloud by day and pillar of fire by night that guides the Israelites through the wilderness. The text describes a luminous phenomenon that moves, stops, and directs the people's journey. In religious terms, it is the presence of God. In speculative terms, it resembles a hovering object providing guidance, an aerial marker visible day and night. One of the most striking angel encounters in Genesis involves Jacob wrestling with a mysterious being through the night. The figure is described as a man, yet Jacob later says he has seen God face to face. The encounter is physical: wrestling, struggle, injury. This is not an ethereal spirit. It is embodied. Why would an angel wrestle like a human? Ancient astronaut theorists propose that these beings were corporeal visitors, not intangible spirits. Then there is the story of the Annunciation, where angels deliver messages of immense importance: births, destinies, cosmic turning points. Angels appear to Mary, to Joseph in dreams, to shepherds in the field. They deliver information beyond human capacity. This resembles, in speculative framing, a kind of controlled contact, targeted communication with key individuals at pivotal moments. The shepherd's encounter is especially notable. A luminous being appears at night. The surrounding area is illuminated. The witnesses are terrified. Then suddenly the sky is filled with a multitude of heavenly hosts. The phrase host implies an army, a vast assembly. Could this be a metaphor for spiritual beings? Yes. But could it also be an ancient attempt to describe multiple luminous objects or entities appearing in formation? The dramatic imagery invites speculation. Perhaps most unsettling are the descriptions of angels themselves. In some passages, angels appear human. In others, they are utterly alien. The seraphim of Isaiah have 6 wings, covering their faces and feet. The cherubim of Ezekiel have multiple faces: human, lion, ox, eagle. These are not human-like messengers. They are hybrid, almost monstrous beings. Theologians argue these are symbolic creatures representing divine attributes. But speculative thinkers ask, why would heavenly beings be described as composite entities? Could these be distorted perceptions of beings wearing complex apparatus? Or are they visionary archetypes produced by the human mind under altered states? Here we confront a crucial tension. Ancient religious visions often occur in ecstatic or prophetic contexts. They may involve trance, symbolism, and metaphor. Modern neuroscience suggests that extraordinary experiences can arise from psychological and neurological states. Thus, many scholars argue angel visions are spiritual experiences, not physical encounters. Yet the ancient astronaut hypothesis persists because some accounts feel stubbornly concrete. They involve movement, sound, physical interaction, fear, and luminous phenomena. They describe objects in the sky, beings descending, and technology-like imagery. Even if symbolic, why does the symbolism so often resemble flight? One explanation is simple. Humans project meaning onto the sky because the sky is the ultimate unknown. Another explanation is that technology and divinity share visual features: brightness, power, awe. Advanced technology would look like magic to ancient people. Thus, if extraterrestrial contact occurred, it would naturally be described in divine terms. But we must remain careful. The Bible is not a technical manual. It is literature, theology, and myth intertwined. Reading Ezekiel as a UFO report risks stripping away its spiritual context, and yet, ignoring the strangeness of these descriptions risks missing something profound. Ancient people were describing experiences that felt real, overwhelming, and beyond comprehension. So the question becomes not, did Ezekiel see a spaceship, but Why do these texts describe heavenly encounters in ways that resonate with modern ideas of advanced aerial phenomena? Are we seeing coincidence, archetype, metaphor, or distorted memory? If the angel phenomenon were confined only to the Bible, it could be dismissed as a uniquely Judeo-Christian theological tradition. But one of the reasons the angels as extraterrestrials hypothesis continues to captivate modern audiences is that similar stories appear everywhere, across continents, across millennia, in cultures separated by oceans and time. Humanity tells the same kind of story. Beings come from the sky, descend in radiant forms, deliver knowledge or warnings, and alter the course of civilization. The question becomes unavoidable. Are angels simply one cultural expression of a universal archetype, the human longing to connect with the heavens? Or could these recurring narratives hint at something deeper, a shared memory of contact with non-human intelligences? To explore this, we must widen the lens beyond the Middle East and step into the mythologies of the world. In ancient India, the sacred texts of the Mahabharata and Ramayana describe flying vehicles known as vimanas. These are not vague metaphors. They are depicted as structured crafts capable of moving through the sky, producing roaring sounds, emitting light, and traveling immense distances. Some passages describe aerial battles, weapons of extraordinary power, and vehicles that ascend and descend like mechanical objects. Traditional scholars interpret these descriptions as mythic imagination, poetic exaggeration, or symbolic storytelling. But ancient astronaut theorists argue that the level of detail is striking. They suggest that vimanas may represent ancient observations of advanced aerial technology, interpreted as divine chariots because no other framework existed. If angels in the Bible descend from heaven, the devas in Indian tradition do something similar. They are celestial beings who interact with humans, sometimes guiding, sometimes punishing, sometimes teaching. They dwell in realms above the earth, yet they intervene directly. Again, the messenger from the sky motif repeats. Moving eastward, ancient Chinese mythology speaks of sky dragons, heavenly emperors, and luminous phenomena interpreted as celestial omens. Records of guest stars and strange aerial lights appear in Chinese chronicles. While most of these are astronomical events like comets or supernovae, the consistent attention to unusual sky activity demonstrates how deeply ancient cultures associated the heavens with agency and meaning. In Japan, tales of the Tennin describe heavenly beings descending with feathered robes, sometimes marrying humans, sometimes returning to the sky. These stories echo the Watchers of Enoch, celestial beings crossing boundaries, forming unions, producing liminal offspring. Mythology repeatedly circles around the idea of beings who are not entirely divine, not entirely human, but something in between. In the Americas, the pattern becomes even more dramatic. The Aztec and Maya civilizations spoke of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a radiant figure associated with the sky, knowledge, and civilization. Quetzalcoatl was said to have taught humanity arts and sciences, then departed, promising return. In the Andes, the Inca spoke of Viracocha, a luminous creator figure who arrived from beyond, shaped civilization, then disappeared across the sea or into the heavens. Ancient astronaut theorists argue that these culture bringers resemble visitors, beings who appear suddenly, impart knowledge, then vanish. Skeptics respond that these are mythic explanations for the origins of civilization, but the repetition is undeniable. Teachers from above, arriving in moments of cultural transformation. Even in Africa, traditions speak of sky beings. The Dogon people of Mali have often been cited, controversially, for their astronomical knowledge of Sirius and its companion star. Some have claimed this knowledge could only have come from extraterrestrial contact. Most anthropologists argue the story is misunderstood and influenced by modern interaction. Yet the very debate shows how eager modern minds are to interpret ancient cosmology as evidence of alien visitation. Across Europe, Celtic folklore contains tales of the Sida, mysterious beings who dwell in another realm, appearing suddenly, abducting humans, imparting strange knowledge. While not explicitly extraterrestrial, these stories share themes with modern UFO narratives: liminal entities, missing time, altered perception, otherworldly presence. This brings us to an unsettling possibility. Perhaps the angel phenomenon is not strictly religious. Perhaps it is part of a broader human experience of the other, encounters with something beyond ordinary reality, interpreted through culture. Modern UFO encounters often share striking features with ancient angel narratives: sudden appearance, bright light, paralysis or fear, telepathic communication, missing time, transformative impact. Witnesses today describe beings that are humanoid, yet uncanny. Ancient people described angels the same way: human-like, yet overwhelming. Could it be that the same phenomenon has been interpreted differently across time? In antiquity, angels. In the Middle Ages, fairies. In the modern era, aliens. This is one of the most compelling arguments of speculative researchers. The phenomenon adapts to cultural expectation. The core experience remains, but the interpretation shifts. If that is true, then angels could represent not literal extraterrestrials, but something even stranger: a recurring, anomalous presence interacting with humanity across history, wearing different masks depending on era. Yet there is another possibility. These are simply universal myths. Humans everywhere look to the sky for meaning. The heavens inspire awe. The unknown becomes populated with messengers. Culture bringers reflect the human recognition that knowledge transforms society. Myths externalize progress as gifts from beyond. So which is it? The ancient astronaut hypothesis argues that civilization itself may have been influenced by contact, that angels, gods, devas, and sky teachers were misinterpreted visitors. The skeptical view argues that these stories reveal human imagination, not extraterrestrial history. The truth may lie somewhere between. Ancient people experienced natural phenomena, meteors, comets, auroras, interpreting them as divine. They experienced altered states, visions, dreams, interpreting them as angels. They told stories that encoded cultural memory, morality, and cosmic order. But speculation persists because of the sheer consistency: beings from above, luminous descent, knowledge transfer, fear and awe, departure into the sky. At this point in our exploration, the question has grown larger than angels alone. We have seen heavenly messengers in Mesopotamia, the Watchers of Enoch, the chariots of fire in the Bible, and sky teachers across global mythology. But the most unsettling turn comes when we bring the discussion into the modern world, because in the last century, reports of strange beings descending from above have not disappeared. They have simply changed vocabulary. Today, people do not call them angels. They call them aliens. Modern UFO encounters, particularly abduction narratives, are among the most controversial and psychologically charged phenomena of our time. They are dismissed by many as hallucination, sleep paralysis, or cultural fantasy, yet they persist across decades, cultures, and social backgrounds. Witnesses describe luminous craft, humanoid entities, paralysis, overwhelming fear, and transformative aftermath. When compared carefully with ancient angel narratives, the parallels become disturbing. This does not prove that angels were extraterrestrials, but it raises a profound possibility that humanity has long interpreted encounters with the other through the dominant framework of its era. In ancient times, the framework was spiritual. In modern times, it is extraterrestrial. One of the most striking similarities is the suddenness of appearance. Angels appear without warning. UFO entities appear without warning. In Scripture, an angel stands before a person, and the person is terrified. In modern reports, witnesses often describe waking to find beings standing near them, paralyzed with fear. The angel says, "Do not be afraid." The abductee often hears calming, telepathic reassurance. The second similarity is light. Angels shine with glory. UFO encounters are saturated with radiance, beams, glowing craft, intense illumination. In both cases, light is not merely decorative, it is part of the presence, part of the encounter. Third is paralysis. In biblical visions, prophets fall to the ground, unable to move. In modern abduction accounts, paralysis is a defining feature. Skeptics point to sleep paralysis as an explanation, but the symbolic overlap remains, the human body overwhelmed by an encounter beyond comprehension. Fourth is communication. Angels deliver messages. UFO entities often communicate telepathically, conveying warnings about humanity's future, environmental catastrophe, or cosmic purpose. This is eerily similar to prophetic revelation, knowledge delivered from beyond. Fifth is transformation. Angel encounters change lives. People become prophets, leaders, or believers. UFO experiencers often report lifelong psychological impact. Awe, fear, obsession, spiritual awakening. Whether interpreted as trauma, delusion, or genuine anomaly, the encounter becomes a turning point. Perhaps most controversial is the theme of hybridization. In Enoch, the Watchers descend, take human women, produce offspring. In modern UFO lore, hybridization narratives are widespread. Experiments involving human reproduction, creation of hybrids, genetic programs. Critics argue these stories reflect cultural anxieties and science fiction influence. Yet the recurrence of the theme is striking. If one were determined to interpret angels as aliens, this would be the strongest bridge. Ancient texts describe beings from above interacting biologically with humans, and modern narratives echo the same motif. But caution is essential. Similarity does not equal identity. Human imagination recycles patterns, dreams, myths, and psychological archetypes can generate parallel stories across time. Modern alien imagery may be the contemporary equivalent of ancient angels, a cultural mask for experiences rooted in the mind. Yet some researchers argue that the UFO phenomenon itself may be older than modern science fiction. Reports of strange aerial objects exist throughout history. Medieval chronicles describe luminous discs. Renaissance texts speak of celestial battles. Ancient Roman historians mention shields in the sky. The phenomenon may not be new. So what are we dealing with? One possibility is extraterrestrial contact, advanced beings interacting with humanity across millennia, interpreted as angels in antiquity and aliens today. Another possibility is a psychological phenomenon, humans experiencing visions, paralysis, altered states shaped by cultural expectation. A third possibility is something stranger still, an unknown intelligence, not necessarily extraterrestrial, interacting with humanity in ways that adapt to belief systems. In this view, angels and aliens are different faces of the same underlying mystery. This is where the conversation becomes deeply unsettling. Because if angels were aliens, then religion itself might represent humanity's earliest attempt to understand contact. Divine revelation becomes communication. Heavenly hosts become fleets. Chariots become craft. But if angels were not aliens, then why do these parallels exist so strongly? Why does the modern alien encounter resemble the ancient angel encounter so closely? The answer may lie in the human brain. The experience of the numinous, the overwhelming sense of encountering something beyond the self, can manifest in visions, voices, luminous beings. Religious mysticism and UFO encounters may both arise from the same psychological territory, the boundary between perception and the unknown. And yet, the possibility remains. The universe is vast. Life beyond Earth is plausible. If contact occurred, ancient people would not call it extraterrestrial, they would call it angelic. So the angel-alien hypothesis sits at the edge of faith and speculation, history and mystery. It cannot be proven. It cannot be dismissed easily. It forces us to ask whether humanity's oldest stories might contain echoes of something real, or whether we are simply projecting modern extraterrestrial imagination onto ancient sacred texts. If the idea that angels might have been extraterrestrial visitors is provocative on a historical level, it becomes explosive on a theological one, because angels are not just characters in ancient stories. They are foundational to the worldview of billions of people. They represent the bridge between humanity and God, the messengers of the divine, the agents of cosmic purpose. To suggest that angels could be aliens is not merely an academic speculation. It challenges the very structure of religious meaning. So we must ask carefully, if angels were alien beings, What would that actually imply? Would it destroy religion? Would it confirm it? Or would it force humanity into an entirely new understanding of both the spiritual and the cosmic? The first and most immediate implication is that the supernatural might become natural. What ancient people interpreted as divine intervention could, in theory, be explained as advanced technology. Miracles become misunderstood science. Heavenly glory becomes unfamiliar light. Angelic voices become communication systems. The divine messenger becomes an extraterrestrial envoy. This is the ancient astronaut hypothesis at its most radical, that religion is humanity's earliest attempt to interpret contact with advanced non-human intelligences. But this raises a profound philosophical problem. Even if angels were extraterrestrials, does that eliminate God? Not necessarily. It may simply shift the hierarchy. Aliens, no matter how advanced, would still be creatures within the universe. They would not automatically be ultimate creators. They could be intermediaries, not gods. In fact, one could argue that extraterrestrial life could fit into religious frameworks rather than contradict them. If God created the universe, why would Earth be the only world inhabited? If the cosmos is vast, perhaps life elsewhere is part of the divine design. In that sense, angels as aliens would not remove God. It would expand creation, yet the tension remains because angels are not merely other beings. In theology, angels are spiritual entities, not biological organisms. They are not born, they do not die, they do not reproduce. They exist outside human categories. If angels were aliens, then angelology becomes biology. Heaven becomes space. The spiritual realm becomes a physical one. This is where many believers push back strongly. Angels are not extraterrestrials because angels belong to a different order of existence entirely. But ancient texts complicate this distinction. Angels eat, angels walk, angels wrestle. Angels are sometimes mistaken for humans. The Bible itself portrays angels with physicality, even if their essence is spiritual. This ambiguity is what fuels speculation. Another implication is the question of authority. If angels were extraterrestrials, then the messages they delivered, prophecies, commandments, revelations, would not necessarily be divine truth. They could be instructions from advanced beings with their own agenda. This is perhaps the most destabilizing possibility. What if revelation was not from God, but from visitors? Ancient astronaut theorists sometimes propose that extraterrestrials manipulated early humanity, guiding civilizations for unknown purposes. This moves the hypothesis into darker territory. Angels as controllers, not messengers of salvation. But this is where speculation risks becoming ungrounded. There is no evidence that extraterrestrials shaped religion as a control system. Such claims often drift into conspiracy rather than history. A more careful approach recognizes that even if extraterrestrial contact occurred, ancient humans would still interpret it spiritually. The meaning would not be dictated solely by the visitors, but by human culture. This leads to another profound point. Angels may represent the human experience of transcendence more than literal beings. The angel is the symbol of the boundary between the finite and the infinite, between earth and the beyond. If angels were aliens, then perhaps the alien becomes the new angel, the modern symbol of the unknown beyond humanity. In this sense, the alien hypothesis may not explain angels. It may simply replace them with a new mythology. Carl Jung famously argued that UFOs function as modern myths, projections of collective unconscious archetypes in an age where traditional religion has weakened. In Jung's view, the sky beings of modernity are psychological symbols, not extraterrestrial craft. Aliens become the new angels because humanity still needs messengers from above. This interpretation suggests that the angel-alien connection tells us more about the human mind than about extraterrestrials, and yet the question persists because science itself now entertains extraterrestrial possibility. We know there are billions of planets. We know life can arise under extreme conditions. The idea of non-human intelligence is no longer fantasy, it is statistically plausible. So the angel-alien hypothesis sits in a strange intersection. Ancient spirituality meets modern astrobiology. Could angels have been extraterrestrials? Perhaps not in the literal sense, but could extraterrestrial life exist in a way that ancient humans would interpret as angelic? Absolutely. If a luminous craft descended in antiquity, the witnesses would call it divine. If beings emerged with knowledge beyond comprehension, they would be called angels. The language of religion would be the only language available. Thus, the hypothesis may not be angels were aliens, but aliens, if encountered, would be described as angels. This subtle shift is important. It preserves the symbolic richness of religion while acknowledging the possibility of misunderstood phenomena. The theological implications also extend into the future. If humanity one day encounters extraterrestrial intelligence openly, how will religion respond? Some may see it as confirmation of God's vast creation. Others may see it as a challenge to human uniqueness. The angel question becomes a rehearsal for a much larger conversation. What happens when humanity realizes it is not alone? Perhaps angels have always represented that possibility, that the universe is inhabited, that humanity is part of a larger cosmic story. Whether angels are spiritual beings, extraterrestrial visitors, or archetypal symbols, they occupy the same space in human imagination, the space of the beyond. If angels were purely spiritual, then their descriptions in ancient texts should remain firmly in the realm of metaphor, light, purity, divine presence. But again and again, scripture and mythology give us something more complex. Images that feel almost mechanical, structured, engineered. Wings, wheels, chariots, thrones, armies, luminous vehicles. These are not abstract clouds. They are objects, systems, and hierarchies that move, transport, and operate. This is where the ancient alien hypothesis becomes most visually compelling, the technology of angels. To explore this, we must ask a difficult question. When ancient people described angels with wings, were they describing literal wings? Or were they using symbolic language to represent flight? And if flight was involved, could wings be an attempt to explain something technological? Wings are perhaps the most iconic feature of angels, yet they are not consistently present in the Bible. Many angels appear simply as men. The winged beings, the cherubim and seraphim, are associated with visions of the divine throne, not everyday messengers. Wings in ancient art symbolize transcendence, speed, the ability to cross realms. But wings also represent the oldest human dream, flight. If an ancient person witnessed a being descending from the sky in a craft, how would they depict it? They might not draw a metallic vehicle. They might depict wings, because wings are the natural symbol of sky travel. This is not proof of extraterrestrials. It is a recognition that symbolism can overlap with literal possibility. The wheels of Ezekiel remain the most famous technological seeming element. Wheels within wheels, moving without turning, covered in eyes. Ancient astronaut theorists have long argued that this sounds like a multi-directional craft with rotating components and illuminated surfaces. But even within theology, Ezekiel's imagery is extraordinary. Why wheels? Why machinery-like complexity? The vision reads less like a simple angelic visitation and more like an encounter with a cosmic vehicle, a throne chariot of God. In fact, Jewish mysticism later developed an entire tradition around this. The Merkava, the divine chariot. Mystics sought visions of the heavenly throne, describing ascents through celestial palaces. The angelic realm became almost architectural, layered, structured. Could this reflect purely spiritual imagination? Yes, but it also suggests that ancient people envisioned heaven not as abstraction, but as a place with vehicles, chambers, gates, and mechanisms. Then there are the chariots of fire. Fire is the ancient word for brilliance, energy, power. A chariot of fire could be a poetic description of divine transport, but in speculative framing, it resembles a luminous craft. Consider how often divine arrival is accompanied by smoke, cloud, thunder, vibration. At Mount Sinai, the presence of God descends in fire, smoke, and trembling. The mountain shakes. There is a loud, trumpet-like sound. The people are terrified. In theology, this is the awe of holiness. In speculative terms, one could imagine a landing event: smoke, noise, vibration, overwhelming sensory impact. Again, the question is not whether this happened technologically, but why the imagery resonates so strongly with physical phenomena. Another recurring motif is the throne. Angels surround thrones. God sits above cherubim. Heaven is depicted as a court with seats, ranks, councils. This is not merely mystical, it is structured like governance. Ancient astronaut theorists sometimes interpret this as a command hierarchy, advanced beings operating within organized systems. The heavenly host becomes an army. Angels become officers. The Bible repeatedly calls angels hosts or armies of heaven. In modern terms, one could imagine fleets, missions, operations. Yet we must remain grounded. Ancient societies projected their own structures onto the divine. Kings had courts, so heaven had a court. Armies existed, so heaven had armies. Symbolism mirrors human reality. But the overlap remains intriguing. The eyes covering Ezekiel's wheels also deserve attention. Eyes in ancient symbolism represent awareness, omniscience. But in technological terms, they could resemble lights, sensors, observation devices. Modern UFO speculation often emphasizes surveillance, probes, monitoring, observation. Ancient texts emphasize that angels watch, record, report. In Revelation, angels blow trumpets, pour bowls, unleash cosmic events. The imagery is apocalyptic, symbolic, but it also portrays angels as operators of immense power, almost like beings controlling forces beyond human reach. This leads to the broader theme. Angels are often described less as gentle companions and more as agents of cosmic enforcement. They execute judgment, destroy cities, unleash plagues, guard boundaries. If interpreted extraterrestrially, angels could resemble a monitoring or intervention force, sometimes benevolent, sometimes terrifying. But again, this is speculation layered onto myth. Perhaps the most fascinating technological-sounding element is the ladder of Jacob. Jacob dreams of a stairway connecting earth and heaven, with angels ascending and descending. Traditionally, this symbolizes connection between realms. But one could imagine a transport corridor, a beam, a portal. Modern UFO lore includes beams of light, ascension, teleportation. The human mind consistently imagines heaven as accessible through vertical passageways, ladders, beams, chariots, ascents. Technology and transcendence share imagery because both represent crossing limits. The deeper question is whether angels were ever meant to be real in a physical sense. Ancient people did not separate physical and spiritual as sharply as modern thought. A divine being could be both material and immaterial. An angel could appear bodily yet belong to heaven. Thus, the alien hypothesis may be anachronistic, imposing modern categories onto ancient cosmology. Yet the exercise remains valuable because it highlights how ancient texts preserve encounters with the unknown, described in the language of their time. If extraterrestrial contact occurred, it would look like angelic visitation. If spiritual visions occurred, they might look like alien encounters to modern eyes. The ambiguity is the heart of the mystery. At this stage, the angel-alien hypothesis may feel tantalizing. The parallels are vivid. Beings descending from the sky, radiant light, chariots of fire, forbidden knowledge, celestial hierarchies. It is easy to see why so many are drawn into the possibility that angels were extraterrestrial visitors misunderstood by ancient cultures. But now we must confront the strongest objections, because the mainstream academic, theological, and scientific consensus is clear. There is no credible evidence that angels were aliens. The angel phenomenon, they argue, is best understood through the lenses of mythology, symbolism, psychology, and cultural history, not extraterrestrial intervention. To approach this responsibly, we must examine why experts reject the ancient alien interpretation and what that rejection reveals about the nature of belief, evidence, and human storytelling. The first objection is methodological. Ancient texts are not eyewitness reports in the modern sense. They are theological literature, shaped by centuries of oral tradition, edited and compiled over time. Ezekiel's vision, for example, is not a transcript of an event. It is prophetic literature saturated with symbolism. When Ezekiel describes wheels within wheels, scholars point out that he is drawing on known Near Eastern imagery, divine throne chariots, cherubim guardians, cosmic symbolism. The wheels are not mechanical devices. They are part of an established symbolic vocabulary. In other words, ancient people already used chariot imagery to represent divine movement. Ezekiel did not need a UFO to imagine a chariot. The culture provided the metaphor. The second objection is that ancient alien interpretations often rely on selective reading. Passages that sound technological are emphasized, while the broader theological context is ignored. For example, Ezekiel's vision is part of a prophetic message about exile and divine sovereignty. Reducing it to spaceship sighting strips it of meaning and context. The third objection is that symbolism naturally overlaps with technology because both evoke power, light, and awe. Fire, smoke, thunder, these are universal signs of overwhelming force. Ancient people used them to describe gods because they are the most intense sensory experiences available. A spacecraft landing would produce fire and noise, yes, but so would a volcanic eruption or a storm. The imagery does not uniquely indicate technology. The fourth objection is psychological. Human beings experience visions, dreams, altered states, and hallucinations. Prophetic literature often emerges from ecstatic experiences. Modern neuroscience shows that extraordinary perceptions can feel utterly real. Sleep paralysis, for instance, can produce vivid experiences of beings in the room, fear, immobility, and bright sensations, strikingly similar to both angel encounters and alien abduction narratives. Thus, skeptics argue that the angel-alien parallel may reflect shared human cognitive patterns rather than external beings. The fifth objection is historical. There is no physical evidence. No artifacts, no technology, no clear archaeological trace of extraterrestrial contact. Civilization's development can be explained through human innovation, cultural exchange, and gradual progress. The gods taught humanity everything narrative is seen as mythic storytelling, not literal history. The sixth objection is cultural. Ancient astronaut theories often underestimate ancient peoples. They assume that pyramids, astronomy, or complex mythology require extraterrestrial help. Critics argue this is a form of intellectual colonialism, denying human civilizations their achievements by attributing them to aliens. Humans are capable of extraordinary architecture, mathematics, and imagination without outside intervention. The seventh objection is theological. Angels are not biological entities. In religious tradition, angels are spiritual beings. To interpret them as aliens is to misunderstand their role. Angels are part of a metaphysical framework, not a physical one. From this perspective, asking, "Were angels aliens?" is like asking, "Were metaphors machines?" It is a category error. Yet despite these objections, the hypothesis persists. Why? Part of the answer lies in modern disenchantment. In a scientific age, supernatural explanations feel less acceptable. The alien hypothesis becomes a way to preserve mystery without invoking God. Aliens are the modern acceptable unknown. Another reason is the sheer strangeness of ancient texts. Even scholars admit that angel imagery is bizarre. Multi-faced beings, wheels of eyes, fiery chariots. These are not simple metaphors. They are visions of the uncanny. Humans are drawn to the uncanny. We want explanations. And perhaps the most enduring reason is that the universe truly may contain other intelligences. Science has not ruled out extraterrestrial life. The possibility remains open. Thus, the imagination returns to ancient texts, wondering if humanity has encountered the cosmic other before. The responsible conclusion at this stage is not that angels were aliens, but that angels occupy the same conceptual space as aliens, beings from beyond, messengers of the unknown. The angel-alien hypothesis is compelling because it forces us to confront how humans interpret extraordinary experiences. It reveals that our frameworks change. Gods become angels, angels become aliens. Aliens may one day become something else. The mystery is not just what are angels, but how does humanity make sense of the beyond? After examining ancient texts, global myths, modern UFO parallels, and the strongest counter-arguments, we arrive at a crossroads. The angel-alien hypothesis, taken literally, remains unproven and highly speculative. Yet the question refuses to disappear because it touches something deeper than history alone. It touches humanity's oldest instinct, that we are not alone and that the heavens are inhabited. So now we must ask, is there a way to think about angels and extraterrestrials without collapsing into either naive belief or cynical dismissal? Could there be a synthesis, an interpretation that acknowledges both spiritual meaning and cosmic possibility? One possibility is that the angel phenomenon is symbolic, but also real in a different sense. Angels may not be extraterrestrials in the biological spacecraft piloting sense, but they may represent humanity's perception of intelligences beyond us, whether spiritual, interdimensional, or cosmic. This is where the conversation shifts beyond aliens from another planet into the broader mystery of non-human intelligence. Modern science increasingly entertains questions that once belonged only to theology. Consciousness remains unexplained. The universe is vast beyond comprehension. The possibility of life elsewhere is statistically plausible. Even the nature of reality, space, time, dimensions, is more complex than ancient people could imagine. If an intelligence existed beyond human perception, how would it appear? Perhaps as an angel, perhaps as an alien, perhaps as something entirely outside our categories. In this view, angels and aliens become overlapping symbols of the same fundamental idea: the presence of the other. Another synthesis is theological rather than speculative. Many religious thinkers argue that extraterrestrial life, if discovered, would not contradict faith. If God created the cosmos, then life beyond Earth could simply be part of creation. In this sense, angels would remain spiritual beings, while aliens would be biological beings, both existing within a divine universe. The mistake, then, would be assuming that extraterrestrials must replace angels. They could coexist. But for ancient astronaut theorists, the synthesis goes in the opposite direction. Extraterrestrials could be the mechanism through which ancient people experienced the divine. Advanced beings might have served as intermediaries, inspiring religious awe. This is where the hypothesis becomes most philosophically unsettling, because it raises the question, what is the difference between a god and an alien if the alien is sufficiently advanced? Arthur C. Clarke famously wrote, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." To an ancient person, a spacecraft would be indistinguishable from a chariot of fire. A being with advanced knowledge would be indistinguishable from an angel. Thus, the angel-alien overlap may not require literal angels as aliens. It may simply reveal that the divine and the technological converge in human perception when confronted with overwhelming power. This leads us to the future. If humanity one day encounters extraterrestrial intelligence openly, how will we interpret it? Will we see aliens as scientific discoveries or as spiritual events? Will religions adapt, seeing them as part of creation, or will new mythologies emerge? Some scholars predict that first contact would be the most profound event in human history, reshaping philosophy, religion, and identity. In that moment, ancient angel stories might be reread with new intensity. People would ask, have they been here before? Perhaps the angel question is a rehearsal for contact. Angels are humanity's first language for the unknown beyond Earth, and perhaps that is the deepest meaning of this entire investigation. Whether angels were aliens is not a question we can answer definitively. The evidence is symbolic, textual, interpretive, not physical. But the persistence of the question reveals something profound. Humanity has always sensed that the heavens are not empty. Angels, in religion, represent the bridge between humanity and the infinite. Aliens, in modern imagination, represent the bridge between humanity and the cosmic. Both are messengers from beyond. As we approach the end of this journey, it becomes clear that the question, were angels actually alien beings, is not merely about angels, it is about us. It is about the way human beings confront the unknown, the way we fill the heavens with meaning, and the way we search for connection beyond the limits of our world. Angels have always occupied a strange position in human thought. They are not gods, yet they are not human. They are intermediaries, messengers, watchers, agents of something higher. They appear at the boundaries, between earth and heaven, between mortality and eternity, between knowledge and mystery. And that is precisely why the alien hypothesis feels so compelling. Because extraterrestrials, in modern imagination, occupy the same boundary. They are not supernatural gods, yet they are not human. They are beings from beyond, carrying the possibility of knowledge, warning, or transformation. In a sense, aliens are the modern angels. This does not mean angels were literally extraterrestrials, but it reveals that humanity's symbolic structures endure, even as our worldview changes. When the ancient world looked upward, it saw heaven populated with messengers. When the modern world looks upward, it sees the possibility of civilizations among the stars. The sky has not changed, only our language has. When ancient shepherds saw a luminous presence in the night, they called it angelic glory. When modern pilots see strange lights over the ocean, they call them unidentified aerial phenomena. The experience of awe remains constant. The interpretation shifts. This is one of the most important insights of the angel-alien debate. It forces us to confront how much of reality is filtered through culture. If an extraterrestrial craft appeared over Jerusalem in 500 BCE, the witnesses would not say alien spaceship. They would say the glory of God. They would say angels. They would say a chariot of fire. Thus, even if contact occurred, it would be encoded in myth. But myth is not the same as history. Myth is the human way of telling truths that are not always literal. Angels represent moral order, divine purpose, transcendence. They are the language of meaning. To reduce them entirely to aliens risks losing their symbolic depth. And yet, to ignore the cosmic possibility risks closing the imagination too quickly. Because the universe is vast, we now know that planets are everywhere. Life may not be rare. The question of non-human intelligence is no longer fantasy, it is scientific inquiry. So the angel question becomes part of a larger human awakening. We are beginning to realize that Earth may not be the center of life. And in that realization, ancient stories return with new resonance. Were the gods simply myths? Were angels purely spiritual? Or were they humanity's first attempts to describe encounters with something beyond? The honest answer is that we do not know. There is no archaeological proof that angels were extraterrestrials. There is no definitive evidence that Ezekiel saw a spacecraft. There is no clear record of alien intervention in human history. But there is also no final closure. The stories remain, the parallels remain, the mystery remains. Perhaps the most responsible conclusion is this. Angels and aliens are both expressions of humanity's encounter with the unknown. Angels are the unknown framed spiritually. Aliens are the unknown framed scientifically. Both ask the same question, what else is out there? And perhaps that is why these stories endure. Because humanity has always lived with a sense that we are part of something larger. The heavens have always been more than empty space. They have been a mirror of our deepest questions. In the end, the question remains as haunting as it is irresistible. Were angels actually alien beings? After traveling through Mesopotamian carvings, the forbidden mysteries of Enoch, the fiery chariots of Ezekiel, the sky gods of global myth, and the strange parallels of modern UFO encounters, we arrive at a conclusion that is not a simple answer, but a reflection. Because the truth is this: angels are one of humanity's oldest ways of describing the impossible. They are the figures that appear when the ordinary world breaks open and something beyond enters in, something radiant, overwhelming, and incomprehensible. Whether that beyond is divine, psychological, extraterrestrial, or symbolic, is the question that has haunted human imagination for thousands of years. The ancient astronaut hypothesis offers a provocative reinterpretation that angels were not supernatural spirits, but advanced visitors from elsewhere, misunderstood through the worldview of ancient societies. In this framing, chariots become spacecraft, heavenly hosts become fleets, glory becomes technology, revelation becomes communication. It is a dramatic idea, and it is not without its appeal. It allows modern minds, shaped by science and space exploration, to revisit ancient texts with new curiosity. It asks whether history contains echoes of contact distorted through myth. But the hypothesis also faces powerful limitations. There is no physical evidence. The texts are symbolic, theological, and culturally embedded. The imagery of angels reflects ancient metaphor as much as possible encounter. To read scripture as literal aerospace reporting risks stripping it of meaning. And yet, the question persists. Why? Because angels and aliens occupy the same space in the human psyche, the space of the other. Angels represent messengers from heaven. Aliens represent messengers from the cosmos. Both confront humanity with the possibility that we are not alone. Both embody the awe of the unknown. Perhaps the deeper truth is not that angels were aliens, but that aliens, if encountered in antiquity, would inevitably be described as angels. The language of the sacred would be the only language available. Fire, wheels, wings, thrones. These would be metaphors for what could not be understood. And perhaps the reverse is also true. Angels, as spiritual symbols, resemble aliens because the human mind always reaches upward when faced with mystery. The sky is the oldest frontier. In every age, humanity has filled it with meaning. In the ancient world, heaven was populated with angels. In the modern world, space is populated with possibilities. So what does this speculation ultimately tell us? It tells us that humanity has always sensed something beyond itself. It tells us that our myths and religions may encode experiences of awe, fear, transcendence, and the unknown. It tells us that the boundary between spiritual imagination and cosmic possibility is thinner than we often assume. And it tells us that the greatest mystery may not be whether angels were aliens, but why we keep looking to the heavens for messengers at all. Because deep down, across all civilizations and all eras, humanity has carried the same question in its heart. Is anyone else out there? Angels were one answer, aliens are another, and the search continues. The heavens remain silent. Or perhaps, as they always have, they are waiting for us to learn how to listen. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I love hearing from you. Check out more videos on the screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.